60 years that we have been defining ourselves according to criteria that are foreign to us. Pluralist regime, single-party regime, liberal regime, communist regime, socialist regime, but where is the regime adapted to African countries in all this? Either in times of electoral masquerade, hold on tight, between 1960 and 1989 out of 102 presidential elections, the incumbent president won the elections with an average of 92%. The ruling parties obtained an average of 83% of the votes. And in 29 out of 47 countries in Africa, opposition parties have never been represented. And we talk about democracy. More than 60 years of instability. Out of 486 attempted coups since 1950 worldwide, 214, including 106. Took place in Africa. That's one coup per year in at least 2 African states. More than 30 years that we have been copying the Western-style democracy system. 30 years of dubious electoral results, post-electoral crises, ineffective governance. 30 years of exorbitant expenses in an ocean of misery where the bare minimum is not ensured. $125 billion were spent between 2000 and 2018 in sub-Saharan Africa to organize elections. How many hospitals, how many schools, how much infrastructure could we have built with that? 30 years of power exercised by leaders more concerned with their own survival than with the well-being of their people. Leaders illegitimate in the eyes of citizens, seeking instead to maintain autocratic systems. More than 60 years of disillusionment, loss of trust, bad governance, and economic stagnation. Just look at the countries that gained independence at the same time as us, and see the standard of living of their citizens today. Singapore, South Korea, for example. Just look at the standard of living of certain countries that are not systematically reminded of the importance of democracy. The United Arab Emirates, for example. What is ultimately important for us, Africans? Copying others or carving our own path toward our deep aspirations? That is the question. Good morning to all. Thank you for your presence, for your enthusiasm, for your commitment, and for your encouragement. From the very first moments we shared this project with you, this project that is also yours, it was a sign that we were not mistaken. The situation of our continent must change, and for that, we need to reflect, to build, to share, to convince, and above all, to act. Because if we do not do it, no one will come and do it for us. I have just described to you a situation that is unacceptable. Illegitimacy, constitutional breaches, third mandates, political crises, lack of inclusive economic takeoff. The governance system is not adapted. That is a fact. Imported models do not work. If the goal is the virtuous management of the city by legitimate leaders towards inclusive progress, then we must accept, as Amadou Hampate-Ba said, that men can reach a common goal without taking the same paths. It is time to change, to question ourselves, and to develop our own response, the one that suits us, especially since we have a rich past, if only in the organization of our empires and kingdoms. And let us not forget to remind those who are quick to engage in selective denunciation on the issue of human rights that we, Africans, were the first to proclaim human and citizen rights in the Mandan Charter of 1236. In the Governance and Institutions Commission, we have worked on several themes that we have outlined as facts. We contribute to the debate with our avenues of reflection, to be completed, to be enriched, adapted, because we are aware that Africa is diverse. Because one thing is certain, change is needed, and we must start somewhere. Our avenues of reflection are made without taboos and in a constructive manner. We question what does not work, notably, the question of the legitimacy of our leaders. They are elected on paper through processes whose transparency can clearly be questioned in many cases. It is normal that, at the slightest crisis, they do not benefit from any support from the population and are swept away, being considered illegitimate, especially since in several African states, we have monarchs who rule without checks and balances, except on paper, and are not held accountable. The debate on term limits, which was imposed on us, is another avenue of reflection. Is it adapted to our current situation, we Africans? Every 5 years, every 7 years, it's electoral violence, constitutional coups. Is this the priority in states in crisis like ours? And those who imposed this obligation on us had no problem completely ignoring this constitutional provision when they themselves were in crisis. Remember President Roosevelt of the United States, elected for 4 terms, and I am not even mentioning General de Gaulle, president from 1958 to 1969. We all see the situation of our states. Why not move beyond this debate and ask ourselves the real questions, which are, how to designate leaders who will govern and work solely in the service of a shared vision. In other words, what is important for us Africans? Is it not what is done with the mandate rather than its duration? And when faced with a leader whose power deviates, we must responsibly think about mechanisms of removal, mechanisms that are known to all and regulated. Because currently, as you will have noticed, the most used method of removal is the coup d'état. Speaking of coups d'état, a Malian proverb says that after a fall, do not focus on the place where you fell, but on what caused your fall. Beyond the almost automatic condemnations, should we not question the causes of these coups d'état and why they always spark hope for change among our populations? But also, should we not stop evading the issue and consider the question of the army, which is clearly a full-fledged actor, whose role must be defined? Alongside our leaders, the question of the actors managing the city, citizens, civil society, and political parties is also an avenue of reflection. The citizen only has a voice in the matter during elections. Our civil societies are moribund, or have become instruments in the hands of foreign powers. And political parties are multiplying and have often become a means to access ministerial positions or other benefits rather than contributing to advancing the debate. I spoke of legitimacy earlier. Precisely, those who enjoy it are our traditional authorities, whose place is known, accepted, and respected by all. Should we not give them back their place, put them at the center, equidistant from political games, and ensure their financial independence? These avenues of reflection on which we are working concern our internal institutions, of course, but this also applies to our regional and sub-regional institutions. In the Francophone zone, the results of these institutions are more than mixed when they are not under the influence of foreign agendas. Otherwise, how can we explain that the decisions of these so-called African institutions are announced from a European capital, or that the heads of state of these institutions are invited by a European head of state to hold their summit in an American city? Whoever pays, commands. Achieving the financial independence of these institutions is therefore a crucial issue. These countries that try to impose their agenda on us all have their African policy, while we clearly cannot even build a common African policy worthy of the name, let alone an African policy towards the world. The common denominator of all these avenues I have just mentioned is awareness and a sense of responsibility. For Patrice Lumumba, Africa will write its own history. The time has come. The time has come without idealism, without taboos, with the courage to challenge certain principles erected as dogma and with the real needs of our fellow citizens in mind. The time has come to seek our own answers, and that is what we are trying to do because no one will do it for us. Thank you.